This is Micheál Martin. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video on the political party Fianna Fail, which he is in charge of and is currently the ruling party in Ireland. I gave them a pretty lukewarm review. I tried to be pretty neutral, and I was even a bit hopeful when they got into government. I thought, maybe they could correct some of the mistakes that Fine Gael had made. Excuse my French, but holy shit was I wrong. Fianna Fail took power on the 27th of June. As of time of writing this, they've been in power for a month and a half, and they have not stopped messing up. And I don't mean things that I disagree with, but they've been doing things that are objectively wrong. In this video, I'm going to cover most of the scandals of the past 6 weeks. I say most because I'm pretty sure that by the time this video gets out, we're going to find out that Micheál Martin is responsible for war crimes in Yugoslavia or something. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to the first one, the Super Junior Ministers. One of the first orders of business when a party gets into power in Ireland is to appoint a cabinet of ministers. In Ireland, we have senior ministers, junior ministers, and super junior ministers. Naturally, the first thing Fianna Fail did when they got into power was to arrange a nice little pay bump for their super junior ministers. A lot of people said, hey Michael, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of people are jobless and we're about to go into a recession. Is now really the time to be giving your friends extra cash? Micheál Martin then held a press conference to answer this question, where he had this to say.
Obviously,
the super junior ministers later agreed among themselves to give back the planned pay increase, but it's hard not to see this as Fianna Fail tripping over themselves to grab a little bit more cash as soon as they got into power. Anyway, next on our list is the life and times of former Minister for Agriculture, Barry Cowen.
On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again.
Barry Cowen was involved in a freak accident in 1992 that rendered him completely incapable of smiling, but he tries his best. More recently, he was Agricultural Minister for a grand total of 17 days before he was fired. He was fired because he was reported to have been caught drink driving in 2016. He was also accused of trying to evade the police when this happened, though he still denies this. For the moment. When this information came to light, he did what any responsible adult would do. He absolutely refused to appear before the Parliament to answer any questions. When he was fired, he tweeted out that he was, quote, surprised and disappointed with the decision. For those of you not from Ireland, this is actually an old Irish saying. It means, I thought I'd get away with it. Now, why did Cowen think he would get away with dodging questions and dodging police? Well, it might have to do with the fact that his brother, Brian Cowen, is Fianna Fail royalty and was the leader of Fianna Fail before Micheál Martin. Probably the last good thing you'll hear me say about Micheál Martin is that at least he didn't let Cowen get away with this. Before I get to our next controversy, I should mention that the issue of cronyism does not start and end with Barry Cowen. To an extent, it's an issue in any political party, but it seems to be part of the culture of Fianna Fail itself. What do I mean by this? Well, as I've said before, when Fianna Fail came to power, they had to choose who got positions as ministers and who didn't, and it seems that a lot of Fianna Fail party members expected to get a minister's position. It seems that Micheál Martin made a lot of promises that he didn't keep. To an extent, I can understand being disappointed if you don't get the job you want, but at the same time, you should be appointed a minister because you're good at your job, not because you've made some shady backroom deals. Anyway, Micheál Martin made a lot of enemies when he appointed his cabinet, and one of them was this fella, Dara Calleary. Calleary said that he was, quote, angry and disappointed at not being made a minister. This is actually another ancient Irish phrase, which, translated properly into English, means absolutely fucking raging. But when Martin fired Cowen, Martin saw an opportunity to turn an enemy into a friend. He appointed Dara Calleary as the new Minister for Agriculture. And what did Calleary do to celebrate? He went and broke the lockdown rules. Not only that, but he broke the lockdown rules that his party helped make. After all, he's a member of Fianna Fail. Laws don't apply to these boys. At least Calleary had the decency to resign without having to be kicked out. I should also add that a number of other TDs and high-profile civil servants did the same thing Calleary did, but Calleary was the only minister present. Especially after complaining about not getting a job in the cabinet, Calleary's actions look really stupid. As of yet, there's been no other agricultural minister assigned. Anyway, speaking of the lockdown restrictions, that brings us to our final controversy. In July of 2020, it was discovered that social welfare officers were hanging out in airports getting people's PPSN. For people outside of Ireland, that's essentially our social security number. If you were found going on holiday, you were going to get your social welfare revoked. And look, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. People shouldn't be going to foreign countries, but it is extremely important for laws to be applied equally to everyone. And the fact is that not everyone is on social welfare, so people who weren't on social welfare weren't being punished for going abroad. Which is great for high-ranking government officials who probably don't need to collect unemployment payments. This hit the poorest and most vulnerable people in our society the hardest, and rich people, not at all. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. Normal rules don't apply to Fianna Fail. To make matters worse, this was around the time that the government published a green list of countries you could travel to. Now, when you hear green list, what do you think? You think you can do it, yeah? You think you're allowed? You think you'd be allowed to travel to the countries on the green list? Well, apparently not. Non-essential travel advice remained in place. You were still going to get your social welfare revoked. It was just an incredibly confusing system that the government put in place. People genuinely weren't sure whether or not they would be allowed to go on a holiday that they might have booked years in advance. On top of that, they weren't sure that they were going to be able to get a refund or even a voucher if they cancelled their flight. Now, let me be perfectly clear, you shouldn't be travelling to foreign countries right now. But the problem is that the government has to stop everyone from travelling, not just poor people on social welfare. Fianna Fail feels less like a political party, and more just like a regular party, except with a bunch of depressed middle-aged accountants. They're a bunch of lads getting a nice big payday. Well, good for them, but it's hard to see it lasting long. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe if you haven't, and if you have, argue with me in the comments. Have a good day.